Yes, thank you so much. Sorry again, but the trains were cancelled and the ones that were running were late, so I ran. Okay. Well, sorry, Morad, for missing your speech, and I might probably say things that Morad has already mentioned because we're talking about the same scene, same story. But forgive me if it's repetitive. Well, I'm just going to go right to the worker strikes. I think that's the main point as what's going on in Iran at the moment. Since 29th of December 2017, and sort of an uprising started in Iran, a mass movement. So during like 2 weeks, it took many cities. I always forget numbers and names, sorry. Many cities, small and big. They had demonstrations. And for the first time, you heard people saying, we don't want Islamic regime. There has always been protests in Iran ever since this regime has come to power. There have been times that have been a bit more quiet, times that have been more turbulent, but we've never really heard in a protest a sort of this very clear no to Islamic regime in the slogans. And then slogans like death to Khamenei, death to Rouhani. It was funny because all the Western media, when they said death to Khamenei, they started giving this narration that people are for Rouhani, for this, so-called reformists, French TV, BBC, America. It was as though they did not hear the previous slogan that we do not want Islamic regime. And then a week later, people said death to Rouhani. Then they got confused, and so the narration changed, and then the total silence on what was going on, and the only thing you saw probably was this state reformist woman, Masih Ali-Nejad, who was in Iran with the veil, with Rouhani. You have pictures of him hugging Rouhani and everything. Then they sent him over to Britain. She was quiet with the veil in London for a while, and then changed, and then all you heard was from her. French TV. CNN, BBC, they all showed her speaking in Farsi and English and talking, and as it went along, she became more radical, of course. First defending a reformist line, and then when they realized really that state reformism doesn't have any, doesn't buy by the people, they started having this, the Islamic regime must go, but replacing it with a right-wing alternative. And we had a very, very interesting slogan, just the beginning. There were mainly students who shouted this slogan, but it got, was echoed in the country, was reformist, hardliner, it's all finished. So actually say, stop with this reformist, because it's more than 20 years now, both in Iran and especially abroad, all the media are trying to sell you a kind of reformed Islamic regime, which is not possible. It's not even pragmatic because it's not possible. But this is how they kept the Islamic regime going. And but now they don't talk about it anymore. Now it's more about regime change. And I'll get to that later, but I'd like to point to the workers' strikes. There were workers' strikes from the beginning of this mass uprising everywhere. Every day you had some strikes in some part of Iran. The main demand was unpaid wages. If you think the workers in Iran are paid 3-4 times under the poverty line by official statistics. It's not me making it up. Even if we take the official statistics, that they say you need something equal to $500 in order to be on the a bit over the poverty line for a family of 4. Now they're making 120 with the current exchange rate. Last year was 220 because the Iranian currency keeps falling. But last year, when all this strike started, was 220. So already was more than half of the official line. But the official line is nothing, to be honest with you. What you can buy with that is just totally absurd. And even that under poverty line wage hasn't been paid for 3, 4, 5, 6, sometimes 1 year. It's always been bad, and it's got worse every year. The power of purchase by the working class people has dropped every single year. But since a few years ago that privatization sort of started, it got even worse. Some of the cronies of the Islamic regime, like the son-in-law of this guy, or brother of that guy, or son of the other guy, they've got these incredible interest-free loans from the banks and got the companies, and most of them have taken the money out of the country. I'll just give you one example. Sugarcane, Hekmatist sugarcane company, which you might have planned, you might have heard about it because it's been a big thing in Iran. I would dwell on that a bit more. The guy who bought it privately is called Azar. He got 800 million euros from the bank as a loan, disappeared, took the money out, and then reappeared. And that was when all this strike was going on in Hekmatist for unpaid wages. Started for unpaid wages, but then we had, it became very radical, and it just went over the question of wages. One of the leaders, a young man around 35 years old, a very courageous man, very radical, militant, called Ismail Bakhshi, he called for workers' councils or Soviets, whatever you want to translate it to. In Farsi we say Shura, which is the translation of both Soviets that was used in, were created in Soviet Union, and councils as it were used in, where the word has been used in Italy, Portugal, and so on. So that was quite a thing. They had a strike for 27 days, first at the plant, and then they started coming to the streets of Shush, the city that the plant is nearby. And demonstrations in the city, they had the population of Shush supporting them, and then they had their families joining them. And then we had the wives speak. They had their children from the school with the teachers. They joined the strike. So it's when you think about it, and when you go, think about the context where it's happening in Iran by the Islamic regime, this suppressive regime, this brutal regime, and then you have a whole city come to support of the workers. In a way, what's happening reminded, if I want to compare it to something that's happening in the UK, you can think of miners' strike. That how the whole society and community was, raised to support them, and the families and the wives and all of that. In some ways, it's similar. And then they arrested Bakhshi and about 17 other representatives of the workers, and also a workers' activist called Sepide Olian, who was there making reports, and so they arrested them. In 2 days, they freed everybody except Ismail and Sepide. And they kept them in jail for 1 month. And during this month, almost every day, there were protests all over the country to free them, to to sort of pressure the regime to free these two activists. And they were freed, of course, on bail, a very heavy bail, and Ismail was actually in house arrest. There was, so, you know, they started broadcasting something made them talk under torture, as saying that they were, you know, members of some worker communist party abroad and stuff like that. And after a few days, they went back and arrested them. I forgot. A few days after, a bit after Ismail was arrested, they went and arrested Ali Nejati, who is a retired syndicate or trade union representative of sugarcane. And it took a while after they released him on bail. And then they released, and then again, in 5 months ago, 5.5 months ago, so it would be, I don't know the I know the Persian calendar month, but just 5.5 months ago, they arrested Smail Bakhshi and Sepide again, and 4 of worker activists who defended the strike of workers of Hekmatist. They published a journal which is called GOM, and in that journal they reported about the strike and they defended the workers. So that is Sanaz Allahyari and her partner Amir Hossein Mohammadi Far, Amir Amir Poli were also arrested, and Azar Mohammadi, she was freed on bail after a while. But they're going to go to court soon with a long sort of case, which is very worrying, and that's that they said that they were working, they are members of a worker communist party abroad, and they were trying to create turbulence and all that. So if that case goes to the court, and if there is no pressure on the government, then they might get 10 years, 15 years jail sentence. We don't know. But the families have started the campaign. If I have time, I'll let you know at the end of my speech. And then also one of the most important other strikes is the steel plant, which is in Ahvaz, very close to Shush. You know Khuzestan, in the southern part of Iran, where all the oil and stuff is. So you have in Shush, you have the sugar cane, and in Ahvaz you have a steel plant. They also came to the streets. They also agitated on the streets. They had peoples coming to their support everywhere, and also in the city of Ahvaz, which is a big city. And then a few months ago, they arrested all the representatives. Only one of them managed to escape. His name is Meysam Al-Mehdi. Nobody knows where he is now, but he does tweet about the situation. But the rest are, then they were freed on bail. And what the government managed to do after arresting these workers and setting free some of the other members by intimidating the other representatives in both Hekmatist and steel plant, they actually broke the strike that was going on, because none of their demands were met. Only they might have got 2 months of unpaid wages, that's all. And nothing else. And all this strike for freeing their leader, all of that just were unheard. So there is still something going on. You still hear at least 1,000 workers on sugarcane or active, trying. You know, they send on Twitter, not Twitter, Telegram channel, they send information about the situation. But no real clear information. And so they usually, you know, the new year in Iran is first day of spring. So that was a few months ago. They raised the minimum wage by 36%, and it's not by the currency rate. I just checked, it was $122, if it's not gone low. And, you know, this is chuk. And even they have raised the minimum wage, they haven't paid the workers down. So we're talking about a country that all sections of the working class, in one way or another, they're protesting. They're striking, they have sittings, they come to the city, they do whatever they can. All sections of the workers, municipality workers, the workers of different industries, and as mentioned, the main ones to you, these two plants that I mentioned. Teachers are on strike, go on strike, and a few days, and then back to work. Nurses, pensioners are constantly protesting for their retirement benefit to go up because they can't live on that. Just simply, they cannot live even when it's paid. But what it is, there's a guy now in jail. He's on trial, and he has emptied the Social Security fund. His name is Babak Zanjani. He was one of the close collaborators with Ahmadinejad when he was president. And one of the charges they report is that he simply emptied the Social Security fund, so there is no money for any benefits to be paid, just taken it. So what you have in Iran is not only a capitalist crisis that you see in the whole world, and especially when you're talking about a country like Iran, which is not integrated in the sort of world capitalism, it has its own problems. On top of that, you have embezzlement like you've never had before. In all sections of the ruling class, they are just taking money wherever they can, right and left. Loans, interest-free loans that's been given to president's brother, president's son, president's daughter, this and that, interest-free. And you know what they do? They take a loan from this bank, interest-free, and then they put it in another bank with 30% interest. President's brother, Rouhani's brother, he's making money doing this, just one of the sources of income. And like for example, you probably heard about the flooding in southern part of Iran. They said 10 million people were affected. It was horrible. And one of the reasons were all these dams that were built without any consideration. They're trying to get to sell, they even sell water. People in Iran don't have clean water. They sell the water to the Gulf regions countries because they don't have it. I mean, I don't know, it just sounds like fairy tale, I mean, in a very bad sort of way. And a lot of deforestation because they produce, what is the plant that you make opium from in English?
Poppies.
Poppies, yes. Pastaram, they produce poppies to make opium. So there a lot of deforestations because of that, and a lot of deforestations because different guys, they like to have their villa by this place or by that place. Nobody says anything. They just go, and if you say something, they put you in jail. This is how it is. I'm not exaggerating.
Just maybe a few minutes.
Okay. But now, in this few minutes I have, I just gave you a picture. It's horrible, but that's very much true. What is important this time is gone for 1.5 years. It's not like 2009. It's very different. They haven't been able to crush it, and still is going on. I think many people have said, we don't have anything to lose but our chains. People actually say that in protest, and that's the case. They have nothing to lose but their chains. Their children are hungry, they're hungry, illness. It's just, and you're talking about a very modern population. Like the workers in Iran, 40 years ago, when the revolution happened in 1979, when I was very young, like you sitting there, and busy going from one place to another, The workers were basically peasants, migrated to the city, maybe a few years before, living in a village. But now they're all urban, they all are highly educated. Like somebody who's got their GCSE, they say, I'm not educated. Like May Sam, in one of his speeches, said, I'm not educated, I only have GCSE. GCSE for workers is thought to be not education. There are a lot of workers who are, for example, gone to university and got their first degree. So it's a very different type. And they are very militant. And we also had council movement experience in 1979 or 1980 to 1981 when that bloody coup d'etat-like clampdown happened. A lot of factories or plants in Iran, they built their councils then, and they started coming together as regional worker councils, and they had general assemblies, routine general assemblies, regular general assemblies. By June 1981, that regime clamped down and sort of crushed all the protests. These councils were banned and just. But now again, we have councils coming out. It's not the majority of the workers. I'm not trying to, make it, but it's very important that a worker came out in sugarcane, talked to his colleagues, comrades, co-workers, and said we need to build our independent council and we need to have workers' control. And then he talked about council for the whole society in a way, and these echoed in different places. So different places we heard. Just recently, couple of weeks ago, there was another protest in a factory close to sugarcane, Pars is called, and they were also asking for their councils, and their representatives were jailed. So this is very important. This is a very, this talk tells you about a whole different kind of movement that's going on. Whether there is going to be a revolution or not, I don't know, but it's very likely. And so you all know is the regime change that Trump is for, and what they're trying to do is bring back a sort of like old regime. Monarchy or republic doesn't matter, but with the same system. This is what they're trying to bring back to Iran. They haven't had any success, so we haven't seen anything happening yet. I'm just going to say one more thing. I hope if there's time for debate, because I think this council movement is very important, we should talk about it. But the families of Hekmatist case, they have started a campaign. I just got the message on my Instagram that the campaign is called to free those, the ones I mentioned to you, their names. And the families have started this, and hopefully it's going to gain momentum. And then, of course, they need any support they can get from abroad. And we also have Steve, I think 4 people from the May 1st demonstration who were put in jail. And there's also a protest going on to free them. We have to see what's going to happen. But of course, they would appreciate any help they can get.
Thank you.